Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Be me. Working security at a beet plant in the morning, been working the graveyard shift. I've worked it for a while and nothing like this has happened in the past 3 years. This beet plant is massive, but it's kinda out of the way. You have to go through several normally locked gates to get to it. Normally the only people that drive through there are stoners, and people driving home from the bar looking for somewhere to hormone exchange. Which I shoo away because people are scared of bright flashlights. It was my job. Was sitting leaning by my door one morning. The landscape where the beet plant is super flat. Like if you were to climb one of the radio towers, you'd see the curve of the earth. There's a river close by that is notorious for creating heavy fog in the last few winter months. It was especially bad this morning. Hear what sounds like a mountain lion scream, which is weird because I'm pretty sure there aren't any mountain lions in this region, just coyotes. I immediately grab my sidearm because I know that a mountain lion in the open plains is very unlikely. Can't enter the beet plant either because I don't have authorization. WTF, I'm literally a security guard. Scan the surrounding fields. I even try to look through the rows of trees that are randomly spaced out. Scenery related to pick, but the trees were a lot less dense. Even in 3 years I never got this spooked, so I never thought to actually enter the building. This was a closed type of farming business where they based your job off of your LinkedIn or job finder, and you got the job over the phone. Normally I'd go to my SUV if I got cold or spooked, but I walked to work today because it was warm out. See what looks like a naked guy running on all fours, but he's like at my shoulder height. I had already lit a cigarette before I saw it crossing the field, because even though I'm white, I still believe that tobacco wards evil spirits off. There's a ton of native people in the area. This thing crossed a 200-yard field in like 30 seconds on all fours. Could literally barely see it in the fog, but I could tell it moved in an unnatural way. I could have sworn I heard its joints popping with every stride over the loud beet plant. It looks back at me. Before it could reach the tree line about 3 human feet away, I fucking lock eyes with it. Kinda looked like pick related, like exactly like that, but it was pale. Its eyes reflected off of the brig heights from the beetant. It cut through the fog, and I could tell it was looking at me. Those eyes are unforgettable. It had that sound that if someone were to crack your back by lifting you up, you could hear those pops and cracks in your head. You know, that really gritty grinding sound. I had gotten good at eye contact because I had gone to a lot of bars in the winter months, as there wasn't much to do unless you owned a snowcat or cross-country skins. It felt like time stopped. We stood there looking at each other. I just had to guard the door, so it's not like I had anything going on. So I just continued staring at its eyes. It wouldn't move, absolutely still. I actually looked at it for so long the fog started to turn to snow and I didn't even notice. We kept eye contact for so long it looked like its limbs were moving. I know for sure it's standing still. Blow the smoke from my cigarette in its direction, trying to mock it for contesting the territory I have to protect. My eyes have gotten extremely dry now from something I only noticed recently. The wind blowing the smoke back into my eyes and the fact that the weather has gotten worse as well, since I made the thing stop its advance through the field. I blink once, but it doesn't continue going through the tree line, but its silhouette narrows, its eye gleam blocking the view of its body now hidden behind what I assume is its head or shoulders.
Can't enter the beet plant either because I don't have authorization. WTF, I'm literally a security guard. Quit on the grounds of your employer withholding their ties with Monsanto, and therefore hiring you under false pretenses.
The money was too good even though I knew it was especially sketchy. The employer promised a 401k and dental too if I didn't refuse. Kinda freak out. I quickly try to finish my smoke. It went out because I was standing so long in the now blowing snow. Fumble around for my lighter, I find it and quickly attempt to light it. In the time it took for me to look around for the lighter, it had already crossed the field. I could hear its joints snapping the whole time. It stops when I look at it, making eye contact. The crunching stops when it sees me unbutton my sidearm. It just stands there like a statue. I do so as well, because I feel like if I ran it would chase me. I'm smoking the filter now. I spit it out on the ground in front of me, in an attempt to distract it, but it just kept on staring. Notice it barely has a mouth, just a small hole. Its eyes are dark silver. Its pupils were so large and clear, that I could almost tell I was looking at the back of the skull from the front. We both stood like that for another 5 minutes before it aggressively snapped its spine backwards and runs off back into the storm. Like I had just seen a contortionist or something. I went back the next morning to find a bunch of dead crows lying out in the road in front of where it snapped its back and crawled away. It's still foggy. I normally expect it to be like this most of the mornings I work. This time I have my SUV parked right next to the entrance. I figured since it ran off last time I wouldn't have to worry about it. About an hour into my shift I kinda dozed off leaning on the door. Then I heard it again. That loud cracking and creaking. It's super close, on the other side of the SUV close. Like 6 feet away. I take the chance to back away from it, unbuttoning my sidearm as I'm backing away. I see it through the window and it sees me. Pull my gun on it, it quickly snaps away and runs on the opposite side of the vehicle. Still have an hour left. Say fuck it and fire off a warning shot, and dip the fuck out.
I don't have any particularly expansive stories to regale you lads with, but the place where I live is pretty damn cursed. Semi-arid area, clay, dry, cracked soil, yet the swamp just a few hundred meters away stays moist all year round. So at night, in spite of the aridity of the area where my house is, a thick fog always rolls in and reduces visibility to about 3 meters in front. Area is about 70% new residential homes that were built very quickly, remaining 30% is overgrown farmland, big dead trees, forest, and abandoned houses, some of which have been abandoned so long that the grass and vines have completely reclaimed some of the buildings. Brother and I have snuck into the woods a few times. Contains overgrown gravel roads, letterboxes, and even a fucked up car park with an overgrown patio, but no houses. I found a severed, rotting cow's head in a black plastic bag on the side of the road while walking around with my brother once. Brother and friends went out into the woods for shits and gigs, found a plastic bag with something moving inside it, but when they approached, he and one of the others saw a shadowy figure move towards them through the undergrowth. The friend who saw it was the biggest of the bunch and got the clearest look, ran away before all the others. While wandering one day, I found an empty plot of land behind a rundown warehouse with a deep, small hole in it, which had a cobwebbed child's shoe next to it. Recently mother and brother noticed 3 guys who always walk around in V formation. The guy at the front is a shady-looking sickly polite white guy always seen in a tracksuit. The 2 who flank him are big buff black guys who never stop stoically staring into the distance, will not make eye contact. Constantly hearing domestic abuse cases, but there are so many different ones it's almost impossible to figure out which house is acting up this time and get there before they stop. A big old dog cries at 1 p.m. every day.
Work in a ski resort as a chalet boy. Also worked summer sometimes. End of the season. Not much snow down in the valley, so woods are available and people have less to do with the lack of snow for skiing. Part of the job is to lead camping tours in the woods during the summer, but since there is no snow, the representative of the chalet decides we should have one now. Obviously I get the honor of leading them as the other chalet workers have never led one before. Woohoo, overnight in cold woods with a bunch of pissed off skiers. Managed to talk the younger chalet boy into coming as my right-hand man, so not too bad, banter us together. Everybody packed, head out early in a minibus to a mountain pass where we will head down and into a forest and eventually back to the village in about 24 hours. Set off. Weather begins to set in. Clouds develop, foggy as we enter the forest. We decided to stop around an old fallen down stone shack. Posh tourists eat their salmon sandwiches and me and the young guy eat our cheap ham rolls. Some of the tourists see an old building in the distance and decide to head over to look at it. We don't care as it looks pretty fallen down, so hardly a way we could lose them. Sitting there for half an hour with 4 of the 6 tourists, and it begins to get worryingly long time since they left. We decide to head down to check on them, but the fog is really starting to push, and eventually us and the 6 tourists are lost. We wander around for about an hour and it begins to snow for the first time in about 3 weeks, just our bloody luck, so it's very worrying, and I start to hear faint screeching. One of the tourists catches a glimpse of a building and he heads over and finds the 2 lost ones standing looking out. Weird coppery smell in the air, but put it down to the old mines dotted about the area. Say hi, where have you been? And one looks around scaredly and says they got lost, a bit stuttery, and the other just repeats lost and glares at her. Weirdos. Gather our posh friends and tell them we have to walk fast to make up for the lost time. We walk fast through the woods and the temperature really drops. The quiet lost tourist never leaves the side of the scared looking one, who seems to be trying to get my attention. Eventually it gets fully dark and we can hardly see despite our torches because of the fog and snow. One of the 4 who didn't get it decided we should stop and camp. One goes off to get firewood and weird one hurriedly accompanies them. Strangely keeps a good few meters behind. Eventually the scared one comes over to me and another chalet boy as they head off and look very scared. She tells us scaredly and looks very terrified as she says it. Apparently the quiet one is her sister. Apparently she heard shouting in the woods near the building and her sister headed off to look. When she came back, the sister had ripped trousers and a cut on her leg and couldn't walk straight. When asked what had happened, she stared at her, like she was sizing her up, and said nothing, but she thought she should go and look again with her. She said she smelt a strong coppery smell in the air like we had when we found them, and the air was almost pressing in on her, and she said no, she wouldn't out of judgment. Her sister had walked towards and tried to grab her nails that were a good 4 centimeters long and cut her arm. This is when we found them. Get scared, then remember another girl had gone off with her sister. Shit. Tell the others to set up camp while me and another chalet boy go off to look for them. Walk away and it almost immediately becomes pitch black and we turn our torches on. Rustling noises in the distance and a weird smell. We hear louder noise, like a weird shout, and walk over. The air feels like it's pressing my ears into my head and the smell is suffocating as we approach. Enter a small clearing and see figures walking around the edge and hear another shout. 2 of the figures seem to walk out to us. The pressure turns to dread and the smell is almost affecting my vision. It all becomes too much and we nope out of there as fast as possible and blast down to the camp. We hear things following us the whole way. We can't find the camp. Weird noises and shouting follow us the whole time and we run. The night continues like this. We ran down the hill hoping for it to take us into the lower valley and the eventual village. There are occasional shouts from nearby which start off like people, but whatever the things were, they must have stopped caring about deceiving us. We slow down to a walk and turn off the torches and walk in almost complete silence for 30 minutes. No noises. Nothing. Walking just becomes automatic and we start to hear sounds again. I don't think they could find us from the light. We walked all night back and we never found any of the tourists except for a glove with the chalet entrance card in the hand pocket. We got home about 10 a.m. and found all the tourists to be fine. The sister of the weird girl was worried sick about her sister who had called her that morning and said weirdly that she had decided to go home and she didn't think it was her. Got an absolute spanking for leaving them out on their own. They only managed to get back out of pure luck. I lost my job and never knew what became of the other tourists or the sister, but apparently there has been a lot of clothing and even human hair found up in those woods.
Be me. Hiking in the middle of nowhere in Utah with friends. Hike a hard day deep in the woods, set up a nice camp in a peaceful valley. Go to sleep. Wake up at 3 a.m., pitch black, moon is covered by clouds. Have to poop, badly. Grab my headlamp and walk irresponsibly far from campsite to poop, I am poop shy. Sitting there in ultimate blackness pooping. Realize not only is the moon clouded over, but a fog rolled into the valley that night. It feels like I'm pooping in a dark void of nothingness. Turn to my right, see glowing eyes staring at me. Sphincter_Titan.exe. Nope the fuck out of there mid-poop. Try to navigate back to campsite, but I can't see shit. Lost my sense of direction completely. And usually I'm a pretty good navigator in the woods. Can't see stars, the nearby mountain tops, or anything at all. Total darkness in the fog. Panic and dread. Keep seeing the fucking eyes, it's following me, feels like it's getting closer too. Every time I see the eyes, I move away. After like an hour I eventually end up at the campsite just by trying to avoid whatever the fuck was staring at me all that time. I completely lost my direction and had no clue where I was. Get into my tent, get comfy, and eventually fall asleep after about an hour of waiting there listening with my knife clutched. Wake up next morning, group is unusually quiet. We all start eating breakfast and there isn't really any conversation. All of the sudden, I feel presence next to me. A fucking big ass deer is literally standing within arm's reach of me sniffing at our food. WTF.jpg. We are all sitting there motionless, watching this big deer sniff around. Eventually the deer freezes, and it seems like it realizes we are humans. It bolts the fuck out of there, stops about 50 meters away from our camp and just stares at us. Wish I had something more spoopy, but that was fucking weird, man. Almost like the fucker guided me back to the campsite and then showed up the next day to say hi.
A story from my expedition days, told in Greentext for expediency. 3 years ago, up at my cabin in a woods in northern Pennsylvania with 2 friends. We decide to go for an all-out 4-day hike. Food, water, guns, booze, smokes check. We all decide to hike north since we know the areas to the west pretty well and we've never gone far north before. First day of hike, we come across a few deer and a bobcat, otherwise nothing interesting. Bed down for the night, wake up early. We pack up our tent and continue on our trek. Second day is a lot quieter and much colder. At around 9 a.m. it seemed to get a lot colder. It had been slightly foggy all morning, but around 9 it really started to get unnaturally thick. Feeling our way around and navigating by compass, I start to get the feeling like we're being followed at a distance, despite the pea soup fog around us. One by one, my friends start to become visibly tense. About an hour and a half into this, while I'm on point navigating, I signal with my hand for everyone to stop walking. We hear something behind us a good distance crunching leaves, then stopping abruptly. We all turn our guns in the direction of the sound and my friend Dave shouts,
"If anyone is following us, knock it off, we have guns."
We stop moving for about 5 minutes listening intently for anything. No sounds. Resume hiking north, still knowing that we're being followed. Fog still everywhere, visibility no more than 15 yards. We hike for another few hours, stopping every so often to listen for whatever was following us, and a few times it seemed like we had lost whatever it was, man, animal or other. Visibility throughout the day fluctuated generally from 15 yards to about 30. At around 3 in the afternoon, the severely dense woods give way to a rather large clearing, I'd estimate a full acre or so. After stumbling around the clearing for about an hour or so, the fog starts to burn off, visibility increasing quite a bit. Notice that the clearing appears to be almost perfectly oval in shape, and in the middle, there were 6 sharpened sticks arranged in a hexagon about 4 feet apart from each other, all facing outward from the middle. Realize that we're about 2 days hiking distance from any civilization. Okay, this is weird.jpg. Anyway, we decide to set up camp and get a good fire going. We put up our large tent and gather some wood, including those weird sticks we found, and get a roaring fire going. Eat our food and we start getting ready for the night. Notice we haven't heard any animal sounds all night, not so much as a bird chirping in the last few hours. We then become aware of this weird high-pitched sound, like a cricket's chirp, but constant and a lot quieter coming from the woods. Welp, we already have camp set up, no point in trying to move on. Still freaked out, we set up watch, with my friend Mike getting first watch. Dave and I head to bed at around 10, leaving Mike on watch with an SKS and 2 stripper clips. 11:19 p.m. Awaken to the sound of a single shot. Stumble out of the tent to see a visibly disturbed Mike clutching the gun for dear life with the bayonet unfolded. Ask him what happened and he tells us that he saw a huge silhouette moving back and forth at the edge of the clearing. Now we're all wide awake, with loaded guns, and scared as fuck. We all sit outside the tent on different sides, using shitty flashlights to try and illuminate whatever is out there. For about 3 hours, we don't spot anything and sort of attribute it to nerves, until about 2:30 in the morning we hear what sounds like disembodied conversations happening at varying distances away from us. It's loud enough to know that it's talking, but not loud enough to determine what is being said. 4 a.m. Fog rolls back in, voices stop. Deathly silence, saying anything sounds loud as fuck. Nope, 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 nope. Luckily the fog burns off around 8:30 this time, and as it does, we see a huge scar in the dirt on one edge of the clearing, where all the sod was ripped up, that was not there the day before. Grab our shit, undo the tent as fast as is humanly possible and nope the fuck into the woods on the opposite side. We walk as fast as possible without actually running, first to the west, and then south. We covered about twice the distance that we did the day before, and linked up with a trail that I was familiar with before heading back to the cabin and passing the fuck out. Still don't know what the fuck happened back there. Personally, I believe we were being hunted by a black bear or something, but that clearing was fucking weird. Like the place is a full 2-day hike from the nearest civilization, and the woods are too dense for people on quads to reach it. Finding it was like finding a needle in a haystack, yet someone was obviously there before. Never hiking north again. Never, never, never.
It's spring, and I'm in elementary school, 2nd grade. Go to friend's house for the first time. He was always a school friend, but we lived in the same neighborhood, so eventually we got off the bus at his house. Neighborhood is super middle class, a little out of the way, and right next to a huge cemetery and wheat fields. Friend plays Pikmin on his GameCube with me, and we kill this big spider boss in a labyrinth instead of fighting each other like we're supposed to. No real co-op in that game as far as I can recall. Starts going around his room taking stuff off his desk and dressers and explaining them. He shows me a toad he caught and made me wash my hands after because his mom told him he would get a wart from touching frogs/toads. Up until now this was all the exposition that I'm using to tell you guys I perfectly remember this day, and it has stayed with me until today. Shows me a mid-sized feline skull that he says he found behind his house. I get jealous, and say we should go and see if we could find me something cool like the skull or the frog. We go out back, and this is the only part that is super hazy to me because I cannot recall what the tree line looked like or what his backyard looked like. The moment we enter the woods I can recall extremely vividly that his mother called out to us and loudly said not to wander too far away, as well as what the woods in general looked like. Proper woods, no branches except for significantly above our heads. One odd thing was that the ground was completely layered in dry leaves, and there was not a single bush or anything blocking our passage except normal-sized trees with no child-level branches. All the trees had leaves on them, but it looked like it was autumn, shades of dark brown, red and orange. Me and my friend stumbled around going in a singular direction, and there was a big winding ditch to our right. I asked him what it was. He said it was beavers that blocked up a river. I asked him where the beavers were. He says they're probably dead or gone, in a lost to history kind of vibe. It gets incredibly foggy and we can't see anything and just continue in the same direction through the woods. Come across a chain link fence. I don't recall feeling any fear or panic due to thoughts about being lost or the unsettling nature of our surroundings. Not much was said between me and my friend actually. We both grab onto the chain link fence and walk slightly left, following the fence. I turn my head first and see, in the fog, basically what amounted to the shadow of a very tall man in a trench coat and a top hat/fedora against or barely inside the fog. I scream like bloody murder and point, no intelligible words. I feel, and I think my friend felt the same, like I had just woken up to all the nonsense around me. Turn around and start sprinting in an absolute wild panic. We arrive at my friend's backyard way quicker than you would think considering how far we traveled inside the woods. I recall the exact feeling of exhilaration after the mad sprint and resulting relief from landing in that backyard. I can easily remember the house from its back and a shed to the left and a slide in the backyard from this point of view. I keep asking my friend if he saw that and panicking in high-pitched voices that second graders have. He says, yeah, 1,000,000 times. I can perfectly remember the shadow of the man in the trench coat, the fence my right hand was attached to, the scream I let out and how it felt in my throat. I went back there in high school after explaining this story to my friend, and there was about 15 trees behind that house with another house and that house's backyard right behind it. There was never any long stretch of woods behind that house. The neighborhood was laid out in the exact same way over the few years. Honestly, I'm starting to believe in quantum immortality because this was one time and there was one other time I should have died. The other time was not paranormal, but hazy memory, and then I'm completely fine. I have to reiterate how extremely foggy it got after we passed over the dried up riverbed. The fence felt like it was immediately after that. No fences were ever present in that neighborhood, but that fence is the most vivid part of my memory. We were looking through the fence, seeing what was on the other side, and then I look left and see the shadow of the man.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.